It's the Brad and John Show.
It's the Brad and John Show. Today's date is April 14th. It's a Monday. This is the B Block, which means we started right around 7:20, but we're late this morning as usual. John, I have a question for you, and before we get into some hard to talk about topics, I need your recommendation on a chemical. You being a former Monsanto / Bayer guy.
Sure, I'd love to, Brad. I think the answer is cocaine.
Okay, no, not that kind of chemical. Once upon a time, I was told there is a chemical that the highway departments and things like that use called bear spot. Have you ever heard of this before?
No, I haven't. It's called bear, like B-A-R-E. Bear spot?
B-A-R-E, yes. And the idea being it's some kind of a chemical they spray on the ground which essentially sterilizes the ground and nothing will grow there. Not weeds, not grass, nothing like that. And I can't find a bear spot chemical. Do you know of a chemical like that? I have some areas that I want to treat this year that I'm just tired of weed whacking the weeds every month or something like that. I just I'm done. Matter of fact, it's one of the transmitter sites around one of the towers. I just want to spray it and essentially say, okay, I'm done for this year. You know what I'm saying? You know anything like that?
I do. So I just Googled it, and it looks like the name of it, excuse me, yeah, there is a thing called bear spot, and I'm not familiar with this active ingredient. It's called bear spot mornibor chloride, and it's a non-selective with a residual. So non-selective, of course, means it kills everything. Residual means it has residual control. So it will prevent the growth of weeds for an indeterminate amount of time. So that could be a month, it could be 2 months, it could be whatever. Now, Brad, I'm not familiar with this. I haven't, and we at Monsanto didn't make anything that had, other than Roundup, which is a non-selective. I'm not familiar with bear spot.
But you would, that's nothing in your palette of weed control stuff that you had once upon a time back in the day?
Yeah, we didn't sell anything that was at least in the United States that offered non-selective plus residual. Now, of course, if you sprayed Roundup, it would kill anything that was there, but it wouldn't. Roundup does not have residual weed control, so weeds could start popping up the next day.
Well, see, the problem I have is I've used Roundup before, and it doesn't work because this is some kind of a weed or something like that. I think it's in the honeysuckle variety, where Roundup does not work on honeysuckle, nor does it work on any kind of poison ivy kind of stuff, any like poison oak or stuff like that. It works on most weeds and most grass, but on certain things it does not. And that's a problem I have with an area around one of my towers where it's in the fence line, and I just to the point where it's like, okay, I just want to spray it and just say to hell with it for the rest of the year.
And be done, yeah.
Yes.
It is hard to get something, though, Brad, that is non-selective and then has that residual. It's hard to do. I would look up bear spot. I would Google it and see if you could get. It looks like some of these are at farm supply places. You could probably get some, at least in St. Charles County somewhere.
Well, but the other issue on this is some of these chemicals you have to have certification to buy it. Isn't that the case as well too?
Yeah, that is true. But I would be surprised, Brad, if some of these, at least for industrial use, you wouldn't be able to go to a farm and home supply and be able to pick it up.
Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, over the weekend, I listened to another radio station. I listened to the refugee radio station. And you remember who the refugees are, John? It was all the people who left 97.1. And they had an interesting show on. This was yesterday, and this was called, it was your buddy and mine. Do you know Tim Jones personally? Do you know him?
Yeah.
Do you know where he got his start in radio?
I don't know.
My station, KWM.
In
the old days, KWM with the mouth. He used to come in with Brian Nieves all the time until Brian Nieves got somewhat of a taint on him when he got into trouble with his election. Then Tim Jones never showed up again. But anyway, Tim Jones is on with another guy. I can't remember the guy's name. And it's called, they have this show, it runs on Sundays. It's called the Jefferson County Patriot Show. And it's all about Jefferson County, okay? They brought up a fight between Ben Brown and Mary Elizabeth Coleman on IP reform. Do you know the story behind this?
Yeah, I linked to several dozen articles about it last year, Brett.
Okay, can you synopsize this for us?
No, I can't, because I don't really understand what happened. What version of the story did you get on the Jefferson County Patriot?
Okay, what they were complaining about was, Tim was complaining about the fact, can you believe it's almost 5 weeks until the end of the House session, they still don't have a bill to get rid of Amendment 3. They were bemoaning the fact that if he were in the House, if he were the Speaker, that third week into the session, essentially like end of January, beginning of February, he would have a bill all ready to go to get rid of Amendment 3. And they're talking about the fact that the priorities for the current session have been misplaced because any good Republican Republican, and I'm paraphrasing here, but they were saying any good Republican, this would be their number one item, to get a bill to get the Amendment 3 destroyed, essentially constitutional amendment erased. And they interviewed one lady. I don't remember her name. I'm driving. I didn't take notes. And she is now a state rep. She's someplace in Jefferson County, and she's going to run for Mary Elizabeth Coleman's spot. She's an attorney. Does that name ring?
Is her name Renee Reuter?
What's the name again?
Is her name Renee Reuter?
I believe that might be her. They interviewed
I
her.
believe that's it. Yep.
And she came out and she said she's against this bill because the very first sentence in the bill is offensive to her. And she says, I'm a woman, I'm against abortion, I'm a Republican, but this bill is tainted. Do you know this part of the story?
No, I don't. What part of it has the taint? And that's your second use of the taint, Brad. For folks who don't know where the taint is, don't Google it.
The very first sentence, she says, of the bill. So they're talking about, but it's interesting. She said, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I like this woman. She said, I am pro-choice. I'm against abortion.
You mean pro-life?
Yeah, pro-life. I'm pro-life. I'm against abortion, but the people have spoken. And I'm thinking to myself, is this refreshing or what? I mean, she's essentially saying, yes, it went to a vote. It went to a statewide vote for a constitutional amendment. It passed. Leave it alone. And I'm like the same way. I'm going like, you know what? I'm with her. To the point where why is it that we're going to, that would be like akin to if you're a prosecutor and you have a case against somebody and the jury comes back and they find the guy not guilty, then you charge him with something else. It's like what they did to Trump. Okay, we're going to charge him with the fact that he did this, and then we're going to charge him with he did that. He got an estimate on his property was too low. We're going to charge him with this, charge him with that. And essentially it's to the point where it's like, okay, there's a thing in our Constitution, the Founding Fathers, because this was what happened in Europe. If they didn't get you in one thing, they charge you with something else. Or they just charged you again. If you were found not guilty, we'll try him again. The double jeopardy clause. I'm with her. If the people have spoken, leave it alone. What do you think?
So, Brad, you've pointed out that the Missouri marijuana, let's just take recreational. You pointed out how long that measure is and that there's a lot of stuff that's poorly written, right?
Correct. And there's all sorts of nebulous areas.
So should lawmakers have the ability to go in and, quote unquote, fix parts of, let's say, the long recreational marijuana law and giving people another crack at it if they say, look, people didn't know everything that was on the ballot. Let's let them vote again on marijuana, provision XYZ or ABC.
John,
so people are saying in the Missouri legislature, let's let people vote again on a more specific piece of this. Why not let people vote again, Brad?
Because it's a slippery slope. You could take
so you're going to use slippery slope and saying we vote on a topic one time and then we do not allow people to go back and fix it. So, for example, Brad, Missouri in 1976 passed a law that said that Ameren and other utility companies can't use construction works in progress. So nobody should have been able to come back and say, hey, we're going to change that. So once something is in the Constitution, we never go back and change it, right?
The difference is you said they passed a law, and this is the whole difference between constitutional amendments and laws. If this were a law that passed the state through the reps and the senators, then if there were problems with it, they go back and change it. But this is a constitutional amendment. And your point you asked me, let's take pretty much exactly what you said. What about the Democrats that say, hey, let's rerun the 2024 election because this came out wrong. We shouldn't have Trump as our president. We're going to have...
It's different because there's a difference between a candidate. So that's a stretch of slippery slope. Do you want the quote that Ben Brown said a year ago about Mary Elizabeth Coleman?
Go ahead.
Okay, this is from the Washington Missourian. Folks who actually read my website would have seen this last year, back in June. And his quote was, there are people, let me get to the specific Mary Elizabeth piece. So he had a dispute with Senator Coleman, and he said, quote, and she came into my office and pretty much threatened to lay the bill over. This is about initiative petitions. And pretty much threatened to lay the bill over unless she was the one to bring the PQ motion forward and then grabbed the PQ documents off my desk and stormed out of my office. And at the time,
I don't even know where to
thinking,
start from all of the things that have been said that are just wrong.
That's great, Brad. And then stormed down to my office. And at the time, I'm thinking, I don't really care who brings the motion forward as long as we get to the end goal. Because I believe it's very important that we ensure that there are certain protections in place when it comes to our Constitution. So he says that she grabbed papers off his desk and storms out. So that's Ben Brown's version of what happened. Now, I don't think in 2025, Senator Coleman wants to rehash this or needs to, say that she was right a year later. But I think that there was some tension there, obviously some tension between Senator Brown and Senator Coleman.
I don't even know where to start from all of the things that have been said that are just wrong.
John, you know what we need? Here's the guy that could fix the problem. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania.
That's what we need. We need the Hulk down there.
Brad, as we get into, I would just point out, too, that if you take a step back and you look at it in a bigger picture, there's going to be a contentious primary for Senator Coleman's seat. And I think different people in the political game are figuring out which horse they want to consult with, which candidates they might want to support. And so I would expect that a lot of people influential in Missouri politics would pick a horse in that Jefferson County race.
I just, this is problematic to me that if you don't get your way, you go back to try to change the rules of the game. And I don't think that's right. I really don't. Do I agree with Amendment 3? No. Do I agree with the marijuana amendment? No. Do I agree with the Amendment 2, the sports betting thing? No. And I still don't understand. You've tried to explain this to me. How in the world can some of these places start Underdog? There's billboards for Underdog. How can they advertise that you can now download the Underdog app in Missouri?
Yeah, because you're not actually betting on sports. You're creating a fantasy team. It'd be like you texting Rosenbaum and say, "Hey, your Tampa Bay Lightning suck in hockey. I want to bet against you. Can I join your fantasy league?"
Well, first off,
you're not actually betting on the outcome of the Blues versus their next opponent.
First off, he wouldn't reply because he doesn't like me anymore, but that's a whole nother story.
And who can blame him?
Right, who can blame him? Okay.
I'm just going to start agreeing with you when you have fantasy beefs. I'm just going to start agreeing with you. That's a totally real beef there, Brad. Brad, can we get to the word that I pronounce incorrectly? Because I'm here to learn.
Just, spell it. Or say it.
Just.
But you don't say it like that all the time. You say like I do the same thing.
Oh, I say Jest.
You say Jist.
Just get the gist of what I'm saying.
Well, but that's different. But see, I have the same problem. I say that as just as well too. But I catch myself sometimes. Just.
Oh well, hey, that's a great correction, Brad. Well, Thank you to whoever got that.
And also there's a difference. And I was corrected years ago by a guy who's very good at this. 3 words: HOUR, ARE, and OUR. Essentially, some people say all 3 the same way, and there's 3 different pronunciations for ARE, HOUR, and what was the other one I gave? There's 3 different words.
So you're gonna give the news update at the top of the R.
But that's the
give it at the top of the R.
But see, almost some people say it as 2 syllables. Hour, top of the hour.
Oh yeah, if that's incorrect, I say it that way. I say let's do it at the 10 o'clock hour.
Well, you say it right. Okay. Okay. I got more stuff. And John, will you please, in segment C, will you let me talk about the KDHX thing again?
Yeah, we haven't talked about it in days, Brad. We were on the air Thursday. Let's talk about KDHX again.
This thing to me, there's been an article that came out, and matter of fact, on stlpr.org, the KWMU website. This, to me, is very problematic because of the fact that...
Brad, you're using the liberals' favorite word twice in one segment, problematic. And there's a brand new piece up on STL Today this morning. It was just posted this morning about KDHX.
Well, here, where was that? Is that on St. Louis Public Radio?
Yeah, Katie Cole literally just posted it this morning.
Okay, I'll take a look at that in the break. Okay, but John, you see, there's a bigger picture here. I rail against not-for-profits, and what bothers me is that, and once again, I got some really nasty feedback from this because I mentioned the wrong Senate bill. I think it was SB 40, I think SB 50. And, man, I know people that work in this segment, And I'm telling you, there's tremendous amount of waste. And what it comes down to is exactly what Trump is doing with Doge. Your tax dollars are going to feather the nest of people who really don't do anything. I mean, they really don't. And it's like they've got a job, they have a nice office, they spend money, they have budget, but yet are they really impacting what they're supposed to be? And the answer is no. And I think this comes down to the situation with what Doge is after. There's all this money that's being spent for things like if you go look at some of the things that USAID spent, and I know that's a touchy subject with you because when you were
it's not a touchy subject. I worked with a lot of people. It's not a touchy subject for me. I just have experience with it. Yeah.
Well, because there were people in Monsanto that worked with USAID money, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I did communications with them for sure.
Okay. But you don't work there anymore, so you can talk about it, right?
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
And you don't have a non-compete or non-disclosure or anything like that, right?
There are certain things I can't talk about, and I know the line very well.
Okay.